Welcome back to On to the Next Thing. I'm Michael, your host, and today we have a couple of different items to review. This is going to be a big review episode. We have a place, we have a piece of literature, and we have a beverage. Today, of course, is November 24th, year of our Lord 2025, episode 26. And yeah, we're going to try and pack some reviews in today, including some things that I wanted to talk about from like a month ago, but never got around to it because of more pressing issues. But before we do that, we of course have to get right into bird news. All right, we have a bit of a mixed bag of bird news today. Several articles about this, but we'll get the least chill one out of the way first. It's the first human dies of rare H5N5 bird flu strain. Here's what you need to know. This one seemed kind of interesting to me. I don't normally do the bird flu articles, but I think that a new strain is something a little bit more out of the ordinary, because normally I've heard of the H1N1. This is H5 or H5N1. I think H1N1 is swine flu. But H5N1 is a bird flu strain, but this is the first time someone's died of a strain called H5N5, which I assume is the fifth substrain of the H5 group, if my naming nomenclature is correct. H5N1 bird flu has been circulating in U.S. wildlife since late 2021, but has caused only one human fatality. Now, a different type of bird flu has also caused a death. A person in the Washington state has died of avian influenza. It's the first human death from bird flu in the U.S. since January. The infection was of a different strain than the one that has been devastating poultry farms and wild animals for the past several years. The Washington State Department of Health announced the death on Friday, noting the person who died had been hospitalized since early November. The agency identified them as an older person with underlying health conditions who had backyard domestic birds. It also confirmed the virus is one of the subtype H5N5, not the H5N1 strain that has caused 70 human infections and one death in the U.S. since 2024, as well as countless deaths of wild and domestic animals since it arrived in North America in late 2021. Many influenza viruses are identified by the way, this is the, if you've ever been into wildlife rehabilitation, this is the strain the strain since 2024 has been one of the ones that means that animal hospitals don't take any wild animals anymore. So it's, not a ton of jokes for this one. It just sucks, but I think it's very relevant. Many influenza viruses are identified by two classes of proteins that appear on their outer shells, hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Hemagglutinin and neuraminidase. Each of these proteins come in multiple forms, and different combinations of these two protein types are referred to as subtypes of virus. The long-circulating H5N1 virus and the H5N5 virus responsible for the recent human death have the same hemagglutinin protein, H5, on their outer shells, but different neuraminidase proteins. The fatality is not a reason to panic, and does not suggest the risk of bird flu are larger than scientists have believed, said Richard Webby, a virologist at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital. We don't have any reason to suspect H5N5 has more or less of a pandemic risk than H5N1, and similarly, we don't have any reason to suspect as a whole it causes more severe disease, he says. Most people's exposure to the H5 viruses is still going to be to the H5N1 just because there's so much more of that in the bird population. Okay, these are obviously direct quotes because that sounded like gibberish to me. I'll give it one more read in my brain just to make sure it doesn't make sense. Okay, so of the H5 viruses, you're still going to be exposed to the H5N1. All right, never mind. Non-gibberish quote, my bad. Poor reading comprehension skills, atrophied brain. One concern of seeing a human infection caused by a new subtype of virus is that the H5N1 bird flu virus may have exchanged genes with other influenza viruses circulating in animals. That sort of mixing, which influenza viruses are particularly prone to, can breed new viral strains that have the potential to cause more serious infections or spread more easily between humans. Scientists have a long-standing monitoring program for influenza viruses in wild birds that has gathered decades of data about where bird flu viruses are moving and how they are changing. This surveillance program means that Webby and his colleagues knew that H5N5 viruses have been circulating in shorebirds and gulls in eastern Canada. Webby says scientists confirmed that the virus sequence from the fatal human case is related more closely to those from eastern Canada than to the H5N1 viruses. This supports the idea that this is an existing virus that made the trek west in birds, rather than a new virus that showed up abruptly in humans. The Washington State Department of Health statement notes that health officials are monitoring people who have had close contact with the deceased person, but that no one else has tested positive for bird flu, and there are no signs of transmission between people. Keeping backyard poultry is a known risk factor for acquiring bird flu. The prior U.S. bird flu death, which occurred in Louisiana in January, was also in a person who tended a flock of chickens. That person was also more than 65 years old and had underlying health conditions. Public health experts say that people who keep backyard poultry should work to keep their birds separated from wild birds to reduce the odds of domestic birds catching the virus. In addition, people should wear dedicated clothing and shoes that stay outside when they are caring for backyard birds, and protective gear such as a mask and goggles when cleaning a coop. They should thoroughly wash their hands with soap and water after touching chickens, eggs, or the coop. People in general should stay away from dead wild animals and from animals that are acting strangely because they could be infected with avian influenza or another dangerous disease. You'd think this would be a given, but in my experience it is not. Experts also recommend that everyone more than 6 months old to get a seasonal flu shot if they have not yet done so this fall. Vaccine won't protect against bird flu, but it will reduce the odds of someone being infected with both seasonal and avian influenza viruses at the same time. Situation that could lead to dangerous viral mixing. Hey, your arm's numb for like a day, but probably a good thing to do. Well, at least that little fact sheet lets us know that it's not a type of bird flu that's specifically going to target people and is especially efficient in people. Although, eerie coincidence that I believe that Washington State was also where one of the first major COVID outbreaks occurred. So not loving that coincidence, but seems like they're on top of it, maybe. I don't know. Next story. Okay, this is an interesting one. Has birds' mysterious compass organ been found at last? Multiple lines of evidence suggest that pigeons sense magnetic fields by detecting electric currents in their inner ears. Pigeons can... This is by David Castelvecchi, or Davide Castelvecchi, major Italian name. Pigeons can sense Earth's magnetic fields by detecting tiny electrical currents in their inner ears, researchers suggest. Such an inner compass could help explain how certain animals can achieve astonishing feats of long-distance navigation. The team performed advanced brain mapping as well as single-cell RNA sequencing of pigeon inner ear cells. Both lines of evidence point to the inner ear as the bird's magnetoreception organ. The results appeared in Science on 20th of November. This is probably the clearest demonstration of the neural pathways responsible for magnetic processing in any animal, says Eric Warrant, a sensory biology researcher at the University of Lund in Sweden. Studies have suggested that various animals, including turtles, trout, and robins, can sense the direction and strength of magnetic fields, although the evidence has sometimes been contested, and the mechanisms have remained controversial. Bird brain navigation. Two leading hypotheses have led the research into how birds sense magnetic fields. One is a quantum physics effect in retina cells where birds see magnetic fields. Another is that microscopic iron oxide particles in the beak could act as tiny compass needles. However, it's largely unknown where magnetic information is sensed in animals' brains and how sensory neurons confer sensitivity to electromagnetic changes. See, the iron in the beak thing is the one I heard about. And then also, I'm not sure, I don't know if I knew about that quantum physics one. That's pretty wild to think about. This is why we do bird news, all right? Stories like this. Well, not a story. This is like a report, which is a story. Whatever. In 2011, researchers found hints that magnetic fields triggered pigeons' vestibular system, the organ that enables vertebrates to sense accelerations, including gravity. Helps them to stay balanced. Structure is made of 3 fluid-filled loops which are mutually perpendicular, so they can communicate to the brain the direction of an acceleration by breaking it down to 3 x, y, and z components. David Keyes, a neuroscientist at Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich in Germany, designed an experiment that can reveal how pigeons' brains respond to magnetic fields. Key's team exposed 6 pigeons to a magnetic field slightly stronger than Earth's for just over an hour. The birds' heads were immobilized and the magnetic field was... Ooh, sounds kind of fucked up, but okay. This is the methods. The birds' heads were immobilized and the magnetic field was continually rotated to simulate the head's motions with respect to Earth's geomagnetic field. Next, the team used a method for measuring activation patterns of neurons across the brain by measuring a genetic marker of cell activity in pigeons' brains made transparent by a technique called clearing. Maps of brain activity in birds that had been exposed to magnetic fields were compared to a control group that had not been exposed to magnetic fields. The results showed neuronal activity related to magnetic fields in the brain region that receives input from the vestibular system, as well as in regions that help to integrate various sensory stimuli. This result narrowed down the list of potential compasses to one, the vestibular system, although it did not explain how pigeon neurons can physically sense magnetic fields. Okay. And then, what's the sense organ? Protein sensitivity. Oh, did they? Wow. Great. Okay, so they cut off half the article. Excellent. Paywalled? Perfect. Wow, thank you, nature.com. Well, that's quite the cliffhanger. Let me see if I can finish it with a Google search here. Because we can't just leave that knowledge gap open like that. That's ridiculous. I'm not paying for nature.com. How do birds sense magnetic fields? Yeah, I mean the AI says that it's through a light-dependent chemical reaction in their eyes involving a protein called a cryptochrome. Oh, there we go. Okay, ideally, it looks like a Reddit summary of it. That would be good. Ability. Okay. Yeah, so I guess it is actually the cryptochromes. All right. Well, that's cool. Yeah, it was from, Lund University. Well, thank you. Oh, and then the poster on Reddit deleted their account. Although apparently that study, that other study was from like a year ago, but I guess they maybe had a follow-up study about a year later or published the rest of their results to figure out the neural pathway. Yeah, so it's the cryptochromes and the Cry4 protein, particularly the Cry4 protein in the eye, and it's sensitive to blue light. Wow, that's crazy. Ability, magnetoreception relies on the presence of specifically the blue wavelength of light. Radical intermediate... Okay, hang on. The complex process involves radical intermediate molecules, which are sensitive to Earth's magnetic field. The Earth's magnetic field, as it relates to the direction the bird is facing, could alter the immediate radical molecules differently, giving the bird a sense for where it is facing in relation to the Earth's magnetic field. Wild. Thank you, unknown Reddit person, for taking that article. Or actually, it was a different article. This one showed up in Forbes. I didn't realize that Forbes did bird news as well, but apparently they do. And this brave soul who was then nuked by the Reddit algorithm managed to summarize it and liberate the knowledge for all of mankind. So thank you to that guy. Anyway, I think that's about enough of bird news. That took a little bit. You know what? No, we're still making good time. Okay, what do I want to talk about first? All right. Well, you know what? We'll go in order of. We'll go in chronological order. Let's say we'll start with a place that I wanted to talk about a little. You may have heard of it. It's home to one of the natural wonders of the world, Niagara Falls. So, for those who are unfamiliar with North American geography, Niagara Falls is a system of waterfalls along the Niagara River, which is a river essentially connecting Lake Ontario with Lake Erie over the course of about, I don't know, probably about at least 100 miles. Or maybe not that much. I just totally guesstimated that, but it's it's multiple like counties away. But it's right along the border of the United States and Canada, and which means that basically for tourism purposes, there is a Canadian side and a United States side. And one thing that I didn't really think about um, before I visited there recently as an actual adult um, was that the two sides are very different. So when I the first time I ever went to Niagara Falls, I only went to the American Falls, and I went there with my parents because we were visiting some colleges out there. They were kind of right in that sweet spot of distance where far enough away from my parents where I'm not worried about them visiting all the time, but not so far where they were fearing for my young innocent safety. But those didn't pan out anyway, so that part of the story doesn't matter. But the point is that while we were up there, after driving for 5 hours or so through just just the agricultural. It's not a wasteland if it's agricultural, but it's basically all farms and woods. And in the part of New York that we were, it's all flat, so it's not even like you're seeing a bunch of mountains and stuff. So basically, there's just nothing but farms and trees until you hit roughly the Buffalo area, or Rochester, or one of the cities in there. But New York, upstate New York, is a lot bigger than you might think. But the point was, we capped off the trip by visiting Niagara Falls, and we only visited the American side because no one had brought passports. I don't even think I had a passport at the time, and and we just wanted to stay on the American side. And it was packed, but it was pretty standard as far as a state park. I kind of would have thought that it would be a national park. I think some parts of it are federal land, but the most of the overlooks and infrastructure on the United States side was owned by the state of New York and run as essentially a state park. And so it had kind of like the run-of-the-mill kind of state park aesthetic, brown signs and really old walkways and infrastructure that was like, really cool and well funded like 40 years ago, and now it's fell into kind of disrepair. But they're making do with what they have. They're applying the duct tape where needed to the to the suspension bridges that allow tens of thousands of people to walk across the falls every day. But yeah, it was really nice, and I didn't really think about that it could possibly be different on the Canadian side, because I'm like, oh, it's a natural wonder. People are there for the nature, and you just go and you look at the waterfall, and that's about it. But as I found out years later, that was entirely incorrect. Now you think that out of the two, you think that since Canada's kind of like our bland little northern cousin, that the Canadian side of Niagara Falls would be a lot more, would be basically like the state park on the other side, except somehow more like, more rustic and more chill. You think it would just be somehow calmer than like, a park in New York of all places. But this is upstate New York. So it's kind of like it's sort of like Canada in itself, but it has a little bit of American flavor. It's basically Canada, but with like a dusting, like urban Canada with a dusting of American flavor. That's the origin of the buffalo wings and buffalo sauce. Very good. So I'm already a fan of that place. So it already was winning me over, but then it crossed the border. And crossing the border was when it kind of things clicked for me that, Canada, number one, has a much better view of the falls than the United States does. And it's just the geography. That's just, I guess, the way that the border was carved up along the river. I feel like if we really wanted to, we could muscle Canada out of both sides of, or rather, it's not even sides of the falls, because the falls they're all, even the horseshoe falls and the the traditional Niagara Falls. They're all on the same side of the river, but really it's just two different angles. You have the American side where it's kind of like, you can't get a super good look at it because you're basically on the waterfall, and it's not super easy to get a good panoramic view of the waterfall when you're on the waterfall. But it is kind of cool to be close to a waterfall, therefore it's a state park. On the other side, it's basically you're looking off of a cliff or the shoreline on the other side, and you get a huge panoramic view of all of the waterfalls. And obviously, developers figured this out long before I did. And so, to my, I guess my naive surprise, Niagara Falls on the Canadian side is one giant casino resort. And I had no idea this was the case. But it's literally like, it's like if American strip malls were another planet. It was like a meteor had like been chipped off of Planet Strip Mall and then just crashed right onto the Canadian-American border. And it sprouted up a bunch of IHOPs everywhere. There's it's like a whole giant resort complex. And then with kind of like a little strip mall and like a small tourist town around the outskirts of it. But the center of it is a bunch of towers. They have one tower that was like the first tower. It's literally called like the Tower Hotel or the Tower Inn and Suites or something like that. And it's like it's pretty cool. It has an observatory up top, and then it's just this kind of skinny concrete shaft going up the ways. And I think there's really only rooms kind of at the base and then at the top, and then the middle bit is just like elevators and maybe some other rooms to get up to the observatory. And then all of the luxury rooms are up top around the observatory area. That's what I think anyway. But obviously that one was that one was certainly the oldest one there because it wasn't like franchised by any other hotels. And it probably used to look pretty cool when it was the only hotel in the area with an observatory where you could see all of Horseshoe Falls and Niagara Falls. Basically just an unobstructed view east and south and southeast all along the river. But unfortunately, at some point in its history, Holiday Inn, the Hilton, the Marriott, and various subsidiaries got their hooks into it as well. And in order to take advantage of all that space around the tower, they decided to put up their own towers. Giant towers, probably about... the biggest one is probably like another 15 stories above the original Tower Hotel. So you have the first Tower Hotel that's kind of cool. It looks a little like the Space Needle. And then they have an even more Space Needle like observatory. Alley cats again. Coming in, destroying the studio. What the fuck is your problem? I'm trying to bitch about corporate hotel chains. But yeah, there's just a bunch of giant concrete buildings around the original adorable giant concrete building. Yeah, and then they have like another observatory that looks like 60 years old, and that looks like the Space Needle. So they have two Space Needle buildings. One of them's a hotel, one of them isn't, and then there's a bunch of giant hotel block buildings with 1 million rooms in them. But yeah, so that kind of, that takes a little bit of the natural wonder out of it. At night, the light pollution gets really bad because not only do they have a light show that lights up the falls, which by itself would be cool, but also on that side, you also have, hundreds and thousands of lights from the hotels and from the casino, which I haven't even gotten to yet. Just showering the whole place in light. So at night, it looks like the whole area is like developed, and it looks like a circus sideshow. But in the daytime, I was a little bit relieved to find that a lot of the natural beauty is still preserved. It's kind of just that one splotch. Like I said, it's like It's like a little meteor from Planet Strip Mall landed right on the edge of Canada and sprouted up a bunch of a bunch of nasty Marriott growths. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's still it didn't really compromise the view. It still works well as like a natural wonder attraction, to put it in Civilization 6 terms. But it but yeah, it was a little bit bizarre to see IHOP signs on everything. I guess I imagine IHOP just kind of got a major stake in the entire resort complex, and so every single breakfast there was either straight up IHOP or probably supplied by IHOP. Which, for those of you not familiar with the International House of Pancakes, 3 IHOPs I'm getting from my sources. 3 IHOPs in one.
Block.
Yeah, 3 IHOPs in a one block. There were probably more because there was basically one per hotel. But yeah, it's for those of you not familiar with the International House of Pancakes, it's even in a luxury hotel, it's kind of just okay. And then what they do is they price it up uh, egregiously in my view. Especially for Canada, which is supposed to be cheaper because their dollar is smaller than our dollar. Our dollar beats theirs at arm wrestling, so I shouldn't have to be paying $100 for breakfast. But here I was. No big deal. I'm swimming in money. I'm Scrooge McDuck over here. I'll I'll throw handfuls of loonies and toonies at whatever. Do you know they're called that, loonies and toonies? Why would they do that? I get it, toonies, because one of them's a $2 coin, but seriously, to me that's just disrespectful to the Queen, who's also on all of their money, Queen Elizabeth. Yeah, I don't think they're going to put Charles on it, but that's besides the point. Overall, I mean, as far as getting to see Niagara Falls, it's a good trip, and the Canadian side does have the better view. That's why they built everything up. But yeah, it was a little bit jarring. You had all these like, semi shady people hawking empty lots as parking spaces for 10 Canadian dollary dues per hour or like for the day. And you had to be pretty savvy in order to not get slammed with extra hotel parking fees or with with extra dinner and service and resort fees and things like that. So yeah, it was kind of like, it was like going to it was like a really nice area with like cool attractions, but with the veneer of like a freezing cold kind of dour Las Vegas. I guess probably not even close to a Las Vegas. It was more like a dour Atlantic City. Probably more on par with like the casinos in Connecticut or something like that. It's like Connecticut but colder. So if you can imagine that, yeah, not a pleasant place to have like have this fun, like, oh, Niagara Falls, it's like the new Vegas. And it's never going to be the new Vegas. Even if they double their organized crime presence, it's going to be nothing like Vegas ever. There's never going to be that many people going there. Although this time I went in the off season, so I could only imagine. Like right now, I would give that place as a whole probably still at least like a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, just because the falls were cool and it's Canada, so you can escape and go out and you can see other pretty places in Canada. But if it was like in full like summer like warm season, which is the time when everyone wants to visit Niagara Falls, which is what I remember from my childhood visit there. It would have been a nightmare. That would have probably knocked it down another 2 points because I would have been sweating. This is my old car. Took it for its last trip across the border, and the AC only works in it about 50% of the time. So I would have been sweating. I would have been panicking. I would have been arguing with Border Patrol. I would have been like, no, I have nothing to declare, sir. I would be all haughty like that. and then I'd pass out. Yeah, that would have put off at least 2 points. But I mean, it's good. Like the falls are cool, but if I had to pick the two, I would just try and be on the American side, and then if you want to go visit the casino on the Canadian side, go ahead. But I didn't visit the casino because, I mean, listen, I'm doing well for myself, but I'm not doing like a corrupt Canadian casino well for myself. Also, they only had one. They had about two convenience stores for an area that probably sees a couple 100,000 people at peak business time. Like I looked around on Google Maps because sometimes there just wasn't anything else to do other than look on Google Maps because you can only see the falls so much, and I wasn't gonna go gamble. Um, but yeah, there were only two convenience stores for the entire resort area, and one of them was like had horrible reviews because it mostly seems like a lot of the. I'll tell you what, I give a lot of the businesses there the benefit of the doubt. Number one, because it's like obviously it's a resort area, so the prices are going to be higher. But also, all of the reviewers, like almost every place that was related to the resort had like a rating ranging from like 2 to 3 stars at best, which is horrendous, especially for Google reviews, where you can literally just create bots to give your business a good review. But to give them the credit, like these are seems like mostly like reviews from underprepared like casino goers, like the type of people who normally would be going to Vegas, but like, it's the off season. I could probably get a deal with going over to Niagara Falls and doing some gambling and looking at the falls and going to the the Margaritaville there and getting some giant $25 drinks and having a good time. But no, they were getting mad. Like they were so angry in the comments, and like half of the comments were also just about the store owners being Indian. So, you know, once again, got to give it the benefit of the doubt because these are we'll just call them casino people. And I think anyone who's met people who go to casinos often and like those sort of resorts know exactly what type of person and what age range they're in. So we'll just leave it at that. But yeah, if I did things out of a 10-point rating system here, I'd give the trip probably a 7.5 out of 10. Because the falls are just beautiful. There's, until they pave over the entire river with concrete, they aren't going to get rid of that waterfall. Or the parks. And the gift shop is okay. You can get some nice Canadian merch without having to go that far into Canada. Oh yeah, pretty good. Okay, next topic. Fairy Tale. Stephen King's Fairy Tale. Took me about a month to get started on this book because I was finishing a philosophy book, and then also I didn't have time to read and I was watching too many movies. Just getting too deep into too many things. But once I started it, it ended up being a fast read initially because I was very interested in seeing where the story was going. And then later on, because it became very generic and silly, and I was kind of may or may not have been skipping over some parts towards the end, and then finished up the 500-page book in about a week. So I already talked about part of it. I mentioned that the character was kind of I believe what is known as a Mary Stew, which is a male version of a character who just has has too much going for them to the point where the plot is like rarely a challenge for them in any real way. And this ended up kind of holding up throughout the entire book, which I felt was really disappointing from Stephen King, who I normally find to be a pretty crafty writer when it comes to giving even strong characters noticeable weaknesses that drive conflict and leave the reader on the edge of their seat. I was really surprised to find myself not worrying about this kid whatsoever, even though he's literally supposed to be 17 and has grown up in the suburbs and maybe maybe has some emotional vulnerabilities. Like, all right, spoiler alert: every single Stephen King book that isn't his forays into like crime noir has some type of demon or otherworldly entity in it, at least like kind of on the peripheral. Whether it's psychic things like in Doctor Sleep and The Shining, or like some sort of vampires like in Doctor Sleep, or Salem's Lot, or like Needful Things and things like that. And it's like it's either that or like a demon. And also, another thing that's almost never missed in Stephen King books is alcoholism. And we already mentioned that in the last episode. The main character, Charlie. Yeah, his name's Charlie, I believe. And if I'm wrong, then I'm thinking of something else, and that's going to be embarrassing in the edit later. But yeah, Charlie, I believe, was his name. His dad is an alcoholic. After his mom got hit by a truck on the Rumple, on the bridge over the Rumple River, which is producer got a kick out of Rumple River. That's real. The book's called Fairy Tale, and his mom got bisected by a truck on the Rumple River. And so then his dad became an alcoholic because of that. But then beat alcoholism before the main story even started. So just as a background, the main character, Charlie's dad, beat alcoholism after his wife died. And Charlie has this kind of like, he has this sort of like, he doesn't really think it's that, but he sort of has this belief where because he prayed to God and like made a deal with God or the universe or whatever, that he would basically owe the universe a favor if his dad was cured of his alcoholism, or if his dad stopped drinking. And then apparently like later that week, some guy that his dad knew who was in AA kind of ended up reaching out to the house and got him into AA, and it was this whole thing, and it's not even part of the main story. But just as a background, his dad beat alcoholism, partly because of him. Also, even in the real world, because of him, because apparently he kind of took care of the whole house, because his dad would just be like passed out or like just absolutely hammered. And so it was actually like, it was kind of sad. It showed like kind of adversity and struggle for this kid in kind of a sort of a rundown section of, I believe, Indiana, or maybe no, I think it was Illinois. But yeah, so it's like, all right, you set all this up, and you're like, okay, I'm thinking, okay, his dad's an alcoholic. He's worried about that. Somehow, some way, that the alcoholism, or like either his dad's alcoholism or perhaps maybe his own fears about becoming an addict, will have something to do with the plot later on. It's going to happen at some point, right? Well, you get into the first couple hundred pages of the book. It's mostly just about him doing his doing what in his mind is him cashing in the favor to the universe by taking care of this grumpy old man in a rundown old house who lives next door with his dog. And the old man like broke his leg on some stairs, and then the dog alerted Charlie, and then Charlie decides to take care of the old man and the dog. And because of this, he develops a friendship with the old man. It's kind of like that. I believe that book I mentioned before, like the Pig Man, where it's like, oh, the kids, it's like a grouchy old man, but then the local neighborhood kids find that he really isn't so bad after all, even though this guy is kind of an asshole anyway. But it's like, it's sort of a heartwarming story. It's like the character issues I had with Charlie that I noticed beginning in the last episode still stand, where it's like he's a 17-year-old who, like, doesn't really talk like a 17-year-old. And then, like, the narrator, it would make sense if the narrator is supposed to be older, but I thought the narrator was supposed to be, like, like 60 or something, like close to Stephen King's age, where it would be like making sense. But no, the kid was born in like 1994. The book is set in 2011, and he's like pulling out. He has a phone, but he's like pulling out his watch and shit. He's like he only has references to old movies because his dad just happens to like the Turner Classics channel, because that's what he would always watch when he was drunk. And you would think that perhaps the kid and his dad would be kind of turned off by the Turner Classics channel, since that was his dad's drinking channel, that he would just watch these old movies and get hammered like Tony Soprano. But it didn't happen that way, and so the kid just loves all these old movies, and so that's why he knows all these old references and no new references from 2011 and no references from before like 1993. But that's fine. Or it would be more fine if, like, either the story was set back a little earlier, which would have been okay. Like Stephen King, from what I know from his other books, still knows how to write things set in like the 90s and things like that. But no, you had to have this one be in like 2000. I think it was like 2013 almost. Like it was like crazy recently set. And then the narrator is speaking from 2022 or 2023. And it's like, wait a minute, let me do some quick math on that. Oh, this narrator is only 27 years old. He's like, oh, I'm trying to be an author on my own. And some Reddit dork tried to like use that as an excuse. Like, no, he's actually older. He's older now. That's why he talks like an older person. Stephen King, he even writes it late in the book, like, oh, this might not sound like a 17-year-old. Oh, that's because I'm 27. I'm a 27-year-old old-ass man. Like, get out of here, Stephen King. Just admit that you wanted to write like an old person. It's fine. And that you didn't have, and to be fair, honorably, probably didn't have that much input from any of his sons. Otherwise, the younger characters would probably sound younger and not sound like young characters from 1970. But that's besides the point. That's just a minor character thing. The story was relatively engaging. I wanted to see this kid get to this portal to another world. That's what I wanted to see, and I was interested in seeing what the other world had to offer. And unfortunately, that was where the book started to get disappointing, because that was when the fairy tale references and metaphors and comparisons started to get really ham-fisted. With Charlie, the narrator, literally just musing about how, oh wow, it really is just like a fairy tale. Yeah, just like in a fairy tale. Oh, I'm a prince just like I'm in a fairy tale. That's why they're calling me a prince, because it's like this book that I read about like Jungian philosophy and like the collective story unconsciousness, which is kind of like the basis for all of Stephen King's Dark Tower stuff, and so it ties in. But that didn't really come in at all, except he just kind of cherry-picked the ideas from his old Dark Tower stories, like having a medieval kingdom that cares about guns, and then having basically Charlie be a gunslinger because the old man basically had a big old revolver, just like how the gunslingers used to have. And there's a lot of just kind of self-referential stuff. They also reference Cujo as a movie, which kind of falls in with my theory that these more recent Stephen King books are set in a different universe than his old books. So I guess that's kind of cool, but it's still tied with the Dark Tower stuff. But that doesn't matter. The point is that the story itself within this book is honestly kind of lackluster. Like I said, I felt like there were all of these setups where it's like, oh, okay, he seems like a goody two shoes, Mary Stu, almost too good of a person, who's like too competent. He's 6'4", weighs 220. He's like the star football player, strongest kid in school. All the girls like him, even though he flirts like a weird greaser from the 1970s. And it's fine. Like that's fine, because it seems like he has some vulnerabilities with like his dad and maybe how he feels about addiction. And then he said that there's like, oh, there's like secret stuff that I did with my shithead friend while my dad was drinking, and I was acting like a delinquent that I'm not proud of, and I did a bad thing, and I'm like, oh man, it's gonna be a big twist that he actually did do a really bad thing, and it's gonna crush him later on in the story when he has to try and be moral, but then the enemy or the antagonist or whatever will attack him from his own moral standpoint, like, oh yes, well actually you killed that homeless man and stole his watch and used it to buy pills and blah 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 blah. You think it would be something like that, or it would just be something crushing where it's like, oh man, this is an unreliable narrator. But nope, fairy tale, it's stuck to its guns as basically just being Stephen King writes a really long fairy tale where pretty much every single problem that he faces while in the other world. I'm not going to spoil all the details because that's usually the most interesting part, and it is kind of interesting. But I will say that almost every problem that he runs into, with the exception of a rare few that you may want to read in the book, I'll leave those out there. It's either resolved by him being bigger and stronger and healthier than everyone in this fucking diseased, fucked up, kind of like apocalyptic world, or by him just being slightly clever in any way, and the enemy involved just being like ridiculously overhyped, and yeah, and he's not called on any of his shit ever. He's never like, he never gets compromised in any real way by the fact that he's kind of crushing on one of the other important characters. That isn't used against him. Magic isn't used against him to find out that, like, oh, he can be like, he has a background of addiction. Like, tell him that his dad is like bring his dad in here, or send an emissary to go fuck with his dad in the overworld. Like, nothing like that. Like, you think his dad would be a major point of vulnerability, but no, it's just like, I almost think of it like maybe it's supposed to be some kind of like cathartic thing for Stephen King's relationship with his dad, or maybe kind of trying to give a better like ending to his alcoholism while he could still kind of reconnect with his sons when they were younger, or something like that. Where maybe it's like kind of Charlie's supposed to be either like his son Owen or his son Joe, and and him and the father getting over alcoholism in the book was supposed to be more like kind of something cathartic, where it's like, oh well, I'm glad I could rekindle my relationship with my sons. Maybe it's something like that, but it's a huge vulnerability, and I really thought it was going to lead to something, but no. Charlie basically steamrolls every major adversary in this entire book, up to and including the quintessential Stephen King big bad eldritch god stolen from H.P. Lovecraft type of entity that usually shows up in his large scale like kind of epic novels like this. And I don't, God damn it, I honestly don't even want to describe what happened in the final confrontation with the final ultimate evil of this alien world that we've only been in for half the book, because the first 250 pages is just him talking about how the old man's dog has arthritis, and that's why he takes him into the magic world anyway, to heal the dog. Just showing you, like, that's the that's the motivation. It's that, and the other thing that I thought was going to be more of an issue, gold, because that's where the old man had originally got his fortune, from gold in the other world. This is kind of unfortunate, I'm spoiling all of like the first half parts of the book that are actually kind of interesting to read, but just forget you heard that. But yeah, it's like you would have thought that maybe greed, like, hunger for resources, or like being like a powerful person in this, in this vulnerable world, might be something that could pull Charlie over to the proverbial dark side. But no, he sticks to his fucking guns, and he stays a good kid all the way through the big bad in a confrontation that I don't even want to describe because it's actually so funny. I want you to read it yourself, because it all kind of like all like the fairy tale bullshit comes together in one moment, and it's the dumbest fucking. To me, it's one of the goofiest fucking conflict. What's it called? Climaxes that I've ever seen. Certainly in any of Stephen King's books, and he's had some pretty wacky shit at the climax, but this one is just fucking silly. So I recommend that if you get a hold of this book, just read it for that. Don't buy this book, by the way. It probably costs way too much hardcover and probably costs too much even paperback just because it's Stephen King and it's 500 pages long or so. So definitely don't buy it. Like, just get it from a library. Stephen King has infinite money. He's one of the only authors out there that has had so much success with books that he doesn't need to write for money anymore. Like, he could just live off royalties. So by all means, let him keep writing, but that you do not have to go and buy every one of his books, especially not this one. But do read the ending, because it kind of all comes together, and it's just like Stephen. Then the author just wraps it up in like 20 pages. Charlie's big terrible secret is revealed after he kills, or after he I guess just stops the big bad, with no mention of it before. It didn't affect him through the entire story, and then he just kind of tells it to one of the other characters, just kind of offhand, like, oh my god, I need to tell you what I did. And trust me, it's not going to make your jaw drop. I'll tell you what, like, as much as Stephen King, I guess, wanted to make this kid like, kind of a complex character, is just not. He is basically a himbo with a 1980s child's clever brain, and that's about it. He also mentioned something about, like, oh, I left coming back from the other world. He mentioned something like, oh yeah, I left behind some of my innocence and my virginity. And I went wait, what? When did he fuck in this book? Because listen, I was skipping some things, but I think I would have remembered a weird ass sex scene in this book, because there weren't, like, the whole other world, like, I won't tell you exactly why, but everyone in this other world, like 90% of the people, 95% are like horribly disfigured. So, like, I don't know who he fucked. And there were like a couple normal people, but they were all very sad and angry and were not at all down to pound. All right. So I don't know who he fucked in this book. I already returned it to my local library, so, and I don't think that finding out who Charlie fucked was on the Wikipedia page, but I feel like it's either something that I missed while skim reading, or it's like some weird old person reference, like some type of little like in-joke old person reference to some piece of media that I don't remember, and that I'll never find. So it could be something like that. The worst case scenario is that Stephen King forgot to put a sex scene in the book and then just kind of implied that one happened afterwards in like the final pages of like the epilogue, where the quote unquote 27-year-old narrator who talks like a 60-year-old writer describes kind of like what happened afterwards, which is nothing. Like, almost nothing came of it. It didn't change anything. He didn't change that much as a person. I guess the only way he changed as a person in this book was finding out that he both had the capability to commit violence and was also very good at it. I guess that's the only character change in this. And then I guess he also lost his virginity to a fucking fairy world creature. Uh, so that's your fucking character development. Fucking chew on that, then go read Mr. Mercedes or go read one of Stephen King's better books. I think he has another one out there right now called like no, Holly is one of the characters in his Mr. Mercedes books, who's like a weird semi-psychic platonic female friend of his old man detective character. I didn't finish the Mr. Mercedes series. I don't think I wasn't really into Stephen King's more like down to earth crime fiction, which then he later turned into more fucking psychic bullshit magic crime fiction. I wasn't a big fan of that. I did like it's not like I'm totally against new King stuff. Like I liked his I liked Bazaar of Bad Dreams. I liked his short fiction in that. Revival was good. I think Revival was very powerful meditation on mortality and addiction and a bunch of other things, which is right up Stephen King's alley. So that was good on him for finding those. The Outsider wasn't bad, even though it was kind of a little bit slow, but like slow burn, pretty decent. Not too shabby. But yeah, Fairy Tale did not hit the mark. I know he had that other one with Owen King, Sleeping Beauties, that one just looked fucking terrible. I don't know if I want to actually read that one. But I mean, I don't know. If it's about the same quality as Fairy Tale, then it's probably readable, but the plot just wasn't for me. It just seemed like an excuse for Stephen King to not have to worry about writing female characters, which as he ages seems to become more and more of a difficulty for him. It always seems to be a speed bump in the writing. He has to make them very strange and quirky, like Holly. Otherwise, it's just like he doesn't know. I don't think he talks to any other woman other than his wife and like maybe fans on occasion in his day-to-day life, because it's always some bizarre shit like that. Like he killed off the mom immediately in this book. Like he knows it's not his strong suit, which does make him more respectable than Dean Koontz in that respect. But yeah, besides the point. Fairy Tale. If I wanted to rate that out of 10, like first half is probably like a 6 or a 7. Second half was like a flat 5, because it was just not, to me. It wasn't worth the hype. Like there's still interesting. There's still like moments that shine through as being like, oh, that was a good passage. That was a cool chapter, cool scene, fun little boomer dialogue in there. Like that's cool. But overall, it wasn't super well put together. I feel like he kind of just like felt like he had to write this story, or maybe he had like 2 different stories that he wanted to write, and then he kind of mushed them together. That kind of seems like that was it. He probably had his helping an old man story that he then expanded. And then he probably had he kind of talked about that he had this world in mind, but he never found like a proper vehicle to do it. And so he just did it as a straight up, like almost like young adult fantasy type of novel, but with Stephen King level of maturity, which is to say like a couple notches above young adult. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It didn't quite click for me. And from what I've seen online, it didn't totally click with that many people. The diehards are going to die hard about it. They'll be like, no, but it's still good. It's still good. Repetition is okay. Talking about fairy tales all the time is okay. Self-referential shit all the time and referencing fucking Star Wars and Star Wars and shit from horror movies from 70 years ago. That's okay. We love that. We love it. We love it. We love everything you do, Mr. Steven. Like, some people are going to be like that, and that's not me. So that's about as much as I have to say about that book. I guess I can do a quick run through of my recommendations for other things. Still watching Sopranos, just hit season 5. Gets darker and darker, but still really good. Can't stop watching. I'm watching, I don't know, professional football. Oh my God. Professional cat ball. It's professional cat ball where I throw a cat 200 yards. through the goalposts, and it's 100 million points, and then I win, and and the cat's loose. God damn. Regardless, yeah, Sopranos, great. Haven't watched a ton of movies recently, but I'm probably gonna watch a bunch again. I'm reading right now. Right now, I'm reading for my nonfiction. I'm reading On Trails by Robert something, not Robert Frost. I keep thinking of Robert Frost, but his name's like Robert. No, Robert Johnson was the blues guy. It's Robert something, but the book is called On Trails, and it's kind of like it's kind of like one multi-chapter essay slash research. Yeah, it's like kind of a research slash philosophical essay about trails and kind of their origins, both in our culture and then even further back, like evolutionarily with to different various animal species, and then kind of like how life is like a bunch of different trails. And it's an interesting book. It's it's decently well written, and it has a lot of interesting concepts in it, and it discusses a lot of cool topics that intersect a lot of my interests, whether that is hiking or ecology and history and folklore and mythology and things like that. So far, it's very cool, and I'm enjoying it thus far. But of course, as the episodes of this show progress, I will let everyone know if it starts to suck or if the guy sounds like a quack or whatever. But so far, so good for On Trails. I'm also going to be starting a new fiction book pretty soon. I'm going to be trying to start the series The Dandelion Dynasty by Ken Liu. And I'm thinking that that'll be fun. But if it sucks, you will know. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. Gonna be pushing forward with some more stuff. Gonna do some more movies. Gonna research some more weird topics. Copacabana kind of hit a bit of a dead end on that, but I feel like that's kind of my mystery. I don't think anyone else has even thought about it ever. So I'm gonna keep doing research into that and into any other weird things that I find. Oh, one other thing, public service announcement. Don't fucking buy a Shudder subscription, because they won't they won't honor your honest attempts to cancel the fucking subscription service. 2 straight months. And I think might have been related to, they actually had a class action lawsuit recently with, it's because they're owned by AMC. And so AMC got a big class action lawsuit, I think partly for that reason, where, people were getting like overcharged their accounts or like, and like having other issues with their payment, and basically with AMC and some of its subsidiaries such as Shudder stealing people's money. And I'm getting that exact fucking thing right now. So that's pretty irritating, but I believe I finally canceled it because I literally blocked them on my credit card and and then chewed them out on their customer service line. So, I hate to be a boomer about those sort of things, but really, I mean, I think maybe the stereotype about boomers complaining to customer service is just a way for these big faceless corporations to get off scot-free from the consumer when they try and screw you over. That's my little personal conspiracy theory about that. But also, boomers are annoying anyway, and you shouldn't yell at a minimum wage customer service representative, but it's totally okay to yell at them through email, and robots don't have feelings, so you can scream at them all you want. And then, in fact, usually the software will bump you over to a human customer service agent faster if you start ranting and raving at the robot. So, yeah, that's just a little kind of, we'll call it ethically neutral life tip right there. But yeah, oh, I did say I had a beverage. here's a 30-second review of that. It's Chesuncook carrot liqueur. And I think the best way to describe the profile of it for those of you who drink alcohol is it's basically Malort with carrots. That's about it. That's the only way I can describe it, because then I'd have to figure out a way to describe the flavor of Malort, which is borderline impossible. I guess just wood, particularly wormwood. It's like absinthe, but without being sweet or like actually having good flavors at all. It's basically just like nasty burnt, like wood, like treated with something. Yeah, nasty burnt treated wood, and then this is kind of that, but less burnt wood and more carrots. And you have that. So kind of gross unless you're just kind of like, I want to drink something herbal today. I want to drink something artisanal. Then I mean, if you're really in that type of vibe, or if you want to pretend that you made it yourself, like you can feel kind of proud of that by pretending like, oh yeah, I made this, because it tastes like something that you would just make with vegetables and grain mash in like your basement or something. But yeah, not super good. But definitely a fun curiosity buy, and a fun little curiosity beverage for parties and things like that. But would not be my first choice for any other sort of pleasurable consumption. So yeah, I'll give that a flat 5 as well, because that shit was pretty nasty. But yeah, that's about it. I think that cleaned up all of the backlog topics that I've had for a little while. So now I'm gonna have to actually start front loading things and thinking of new stuff to talk about. It's probably going to be more work stories, probably going to be more work tips, lifestyle advice from someone who obviously has their life together, and more quips, more reviews, more alley cats attacking the studio and giving me an anaphylactic attack in the middle of recording because hair gets into my eyes, and then I can't see and I can't talk very well. And then my voice starts to give out, and things start to go downhill in quality. But we'll get there. Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the podcast at OTNT Podcast on Instagram, Blue Sky, and Mastodon. Probably going to set up, I know I keep saying this, so I'm going to be probably setting up something else pretty soon, whether that's X or an actual RSS feed for like real audio streaming services. So stay tuned for that. Keep checking back for updates. If you have any questions, make sure you questions, recommendations, demands, critiques, rants, anything, leave a comment. Use the business email that's on the YouTube page, and let me know what you think. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.